Restorative Practices is a relationship-building, strength-based, and solution-focused approach to build relationships and repair harm. It's a mindset, a way of life. It's not something that we just do when something happens, but it's something that we incorporate into our everyday lives. Royal Oak staff have been through professional developments in restorative practices so that they can incorporate it both virtually and when we go back to face-to-face instruction. The fundamental hypothesis of restorative practices is that human beings are happier, more cooperative and productive, and more likely to make positive changes in their behavior when those in positions of authority do things with them rather than to them or for them. The aim of restorative practices is to develop community and to manage conflict and tensions by repairing harm and restoring relationships. There are many benefits to using restorative practices. They help create a stronger school culture. They enhance responsibility. It helps provide a safe environment for staff and students to be able to express their emotions. And hopefully it helps reduce certain types of behavior so that we have less incidents arise and that we're focusing on repairing the harm and continuing to create those positive relationships. Restorative practices is an explicit framework that we use so that we can have common language and clarity so that we can be consistent. In order to be explicit, we need to actively integrate these four things: the social discipline window, fair process, psychology of affect, and the restorative practices continuum. And today we're going to talk a little bit about it so that you can have a better understanding of what restorative practices is all about. The social discipline window is a tool that gauges how collaborative an interaction is with another person. The restorative practices approach combines high levels of control with high levels of support so that people can succeed and make positive changes. When we're talking about control, we're talking about limit setting, discipline, setting boundaries, and having high expectations. When we talk about support, we're talking about encouragement, nurturing, and love. And so the idea is that we want to be in that with box. We want to have high control and high support. Now these boxes are permeable, so we're not always going to be in the with box, but that is our goal. And we use the social discipline window to help us make sure that we're being restorative. The central idea of fair process is that individuals are most likely to trust and cooperate freely with systems, whether they themselves win or lose by those systems, when fair process is observed. The idea is that when a process includes the 3 E's, then the outcome tends to be easier to support. So the 3 principles of fair process, or the 3 E's, are engagement, explanation, and expectation clarity. When we talk about engagement, it just means that we involve individuals in decisions that affect them by asking for their input. For explanation, it means that everyone involved and affected should understand why final decisions are made as they are. And when we talk about expectation clarity, once a decision is made, the new rules are clearly stated so that individuals understand the new standards and any possible penalties for failure. So fair process allows us to be in the with box. In restorative practices, we have the 9 affects. The idea is that we're all emotionally unique. And so we might have the same affect triggered, but we're probably going to respond in a different manner. And so when we talk about shame in restorative practices, we're talking about an interruption of one's affect of joy. So for example, you might be driving and you're at a stoplight and your favorite song comes on the radio, and so you're singing along with it and you're really into your song and you're really happy, and then the person behind you lays on the horn. Right then and there, your affect of joy was interrupted. And so when we talk about an interruption in one's affect of joy, it takes us to the compass of shame. So the compass of shame shows various ways that human beings react when they feel shame. So a person doesn't have to really do something wrong. It's just that feeling that your joy is interrupted, and it's going to cause us to react in a certain way. The compass of shame has 4 poles: withdrawal, attack self, avoidance, and attack other. So the idea is that we want to make sure that we're responding to shame in a healthy and responsible way. We want to make sure that we're acknowledging our feelings and encouraging others to talk about what they're feeling. It's also super important to practice self-care. The Central Blueprint reminds us that individuals are healthiest and at their best when they maximize positive affect, minimize negative affect, minimize inhibition of affect, and do as much of the above 3 as possible. And so what this is saying is that when we build healthy relationships, we're building trust, and we're doing things that are good for us. It means that we're practicing self-care and self-love. It also means that we're dealing with things that are causing us to feel sad or bad. When we take risks and allow ourselves to feel safe and vulnerable, it's healthy for ourselves and for those that are around us. And we just want to make sure that we're continuing to do as much of these things as much as we can. The Restorative Practices Continuum allows us to ensure that we are all doing the things that are on the Central Blueprint. The idea is that we want to be 80% proactive and 20% responsive. When we look at the continuum, as we go from left to right, it goes from informal to more formal. The farther we go to the right, the more time it takes, the more people, the more effort. And so the idea is that we want to be doing a lot of the informal things every day in our schools and in our daily lives so that we can do less of the formal things. We have effective statements, effective questions, small impromptu conversations, circles, and formal conferences. Now, it is a continuum, but it does not necessarily mean that it's going to go from effective statements to effective questions and so on. The idea is that we're using effective statements and that we're doing proactive circles so that we have to do less of the formal conferencing and small impromptu conversations or responsive circles. When we talk about effective statements, the idea is that we're using these in our daily life, both at school and at home. We use effective statements to let people know how their actions or behaviors have made someone feel. It helps build relationships and develops empathy. So it allows students to understand the impact that their behavior has had on others. We can use effective statements for both positive and negative situations. We can use them virtually, online, or when we're in person. We can also use them with adults and children. So the idea is that adults are using effective statements in the classroom and at home so that children can understand what effective statements are, and hopefully they can start using them with each other. Here's a template that you can use if you would like to try to do an effective statement. So, when you are blank, describe the action. I feel blank, state the feeling. Because I blank, and state the need or the want. For example, you could say, when you're looking at the phone at the table, I feel frustrated because I worked hard to prepare dinner for us and I would like to hear about your day. Or you could say, when you helped your brother with his homework, it made me so happy because it showed me that you want him to be successful too. So effective statements can be incorporated into all of our everyday lives. And it can be as simple as an I statement. You don't have to use that other template. You can just express emotion that's connected to a behavior. So for example, I am happy that, and you can express what made you happy. Or I am hurt by, and you can express what hurt you. The idea is that we're using effective statements and incorporating them into our everyday lives so that students start incorporating them into their everyday lives. Now we're going to talk about effective questions or restorative questions. The idea is that we're trying to de-escalate a situation. So we're looking at body language, both our own and whoever we're talking to. We also listen to tone of voice. Again, we're checking ourselves and listening to whoever we're talking to. We also are being culturally responsive. But the fact is that we might still have an incident arise. And if that does happen, we use what we call effective questions or restorative questions. These are the questions that we use. What happened? What were you thinking of at the time? What have you thought about since? Who has been affected by what you have done and in what way? And what do we need to do to make things right? Now you'll notice that there's no why in those questions, because when we ask why, sometimes we might not get a full response, or we might trigger a defense mechanism. You'll notice that the questions are open-ended, so they help elicit emotions. They help address the past, the present, and the future. And by using these questions, we're able to achieve fair process. So we're promoting positive changes in behavior, and we're able to hear both sides of the story so that we can repair any harm as needed. Small impromptu conversations are conversations that staff might have with students at their locker or at recess. They might not go through all the questions, but they'll definitely ask what happened. And the idea is this is just another chance for staff to interact with students, to see what's going on, and to see where they need help or what we can do to make things right and move on. Now we're going to talk about circles. We talked about the idea that we want to have 80% proactive, 20% responsive. And so this is where the 80% proactive really comes in. Along with the effective statements, doing proactive circles can be super powerful. When we talk about proactive circles, we're talking about doing check-ins or playing games or doing fun icebreakers. A great thing to incorporate in proactive circles are social and emotional learning. That's a chance for students to understand character education building skills and to help them so that they can succeed in the classroom and in the whole community as well. You can also use academics in proactive circles, but the idea is that the setting of a circle allows the chance for students to feel included and to feel safe to be able to share what's on their mind and to help to continue to build those positive, healthy relationships. We also have responsive circles, and these could be more reactive if an incident occurs, but the idea of these circles is just to make sure that everyone's on the same page and to let students know that they are supported so that they can be successful and that they can do well in school, even if something has happened. Formal conferences are something that take a lot of time, a lot of effort. There's a script, and the idea is hopefully that we're doing a lot of the informal things on the continuum, so hopefully we don't have to get to formal conferences. And I want to leave you on this note. Remember the central blueprint. Remind yourself that individuals are healthiest and at their best when they maximize the positive affect, minimize the negative affect, minimize inhibition of affect, and continue to do as much of the above three as possible. Remember to always lead with love, and please let me know if you have any questions about restorative practices. You can contact me at nicole.reynolds@royaloakschools.org. Thank you so much.